Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam, and you're watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies. And today we're going to be talking about 10 movies you can currently catch for free right here on YouTube. So these are not pirated movies that people posted illegally. These are movies YouTube has posted. They're free to watch for a limited time. As usual, the full list of all the movies discussed in this video is located in the top pinned comment down below. I've also linked to each movie directly on YouTube. Click the link and you can start watching the movies I'm talking about in this video. However, keep in mind, these will not be free forever, so in the future you may click, YouTube may ask you for a few bucks. So be sure you've got that subscribe button clicked and maybe even the bell icon. That way you get notified when videos like this get released so you don't miss the movies before they're gone. That said, this list is going to be a little unusual for this channel. I've got 5 familiar favorites I'm going to tell you about that you probably didn't know were free on YouTube right now, plus 5 hidden gems that you have probably never even heard of. We're going to start this list off with the 5 familiar favorites, all the way at the back of my recommendations with Hackers. This was released in 1995 and is a good watch for multiple reasons, the chief one being nostalgia. If you enjoyed this movie back in the day, it holds up in a nostalgic sense, but you also get to see some early performances from Angelina Jolie and Matthew Lillard. The villains in this movies are kind of cartoony and also kind of cheesy, but not in a bad way. Again, this is a nostalgic watch, not necessarily a crisp, fresh watch. The fashion and the style that they're wearing in this movie is also really wild. I think this is kind of in the mid-90s where people thought fashion was going to be going in the future. Obviously that is not the case, but it's still kind of cool to see it on screen. Something else you see on screen is the way they visualize what's happening when they're hacking and logging into things. It's really stupid looking, but you do have to keep in mind, this came out in 1995. That was around a time when a lot of people were just getting their first PC in their home, maybe. So mass audiences had no frame of reference for what hacking looked like, for what code looked like, for what using a computer really looked like. So the visualizations are kind of wonky and they're gonna look weird to you today, but that's also kind of what's cool about it. That's what makes it such a good nostalgic watch. You've also got a good soundtrack in there, just kind of a good funky vibe that could have only really come out of the mid-90s. Now I find that lower budget comedies tend to not work very often. In fact, comedy movies in general tend to not work. It's a very difficult thing to pull off, but I find Idiocracy to be one of the most successfully funny movies done on a budget of all time. Now, I will say $4 million does not sound like a low budget to most people, but it is for this type of movie. With this many effects, with this many stars in it, this was done on a shoestring budget, and you can tell at times, but it doesn't matter because all the jokes are landing. And yes, some of the jokes are really crude, but most of them are just stupid. If you've never seen this movie, Luke Wilson takes part in a military experiment where he agrees to be frozen for a short period of time. He ends up waking up way in the future, in a future where everybody on Earth is incredibly stupid, and as average as he is, he's now the smartest man alive. That setup alone is pure genius. All the characters that come and go out of this movie are fantastic. President Camacho, played by Terry Crews, happens to be my favorite. But the reason this is so funny and the reason it all works is because it's from creator Mike Judge. If that name sounds familiar, he is most famous for having created shows like Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill, but he's also the brain behind Office Space. And while Office Space does have a bigger audience and is arguably the better movie, Idiocracy easily packs more laughs in. Now yes, it does go for cheap laughs a lot of times, but a laugh is a laugh in my opinion in this movie. If you like silly over-the-top stuff and you're not turned off by crude humor, Idiocracy is a great way to go. Now quite possibly the best, at least my favorite, but quite possibly the best Robert De Niro action movie of all time is Ronin. Now you might be thinking that's not saying much because Robert De Niro didn't do a lot of action movies, and you would be right, but Ronin is still exceptional for a couple of reasons. One, it's just a good solid spy thriller. You've got a lot of great actors, not just De Niro, and everything works. It's a really good spy espionage stuff. It's intriguing, it's got a great look to it, but this movie does feature multiple car chases that are among the best ever filmed. And they do something that you don't see a lot in movies anymore. If you didn't know this, a lot of what you're seeing in those Fast and the Furious movies is a cartoon. It's just computer animated. Yeah, they're driving cars sometimes, but the best shots are all done in a computer, and you're basically watching an animated movie. You watch something like Ronin, none of it is done in a computer. It's all done at speed, more or less. Yes, they're speeding it up, but they're all driving fairly quickly in and out of what appears to be real traffic, and above all else with Ronin, it is shot supremely well. And I'm not just talking about the cinematography and the way it looks, I'm talking about how these car chases are orchestrated. If you take a minute and think about a car chase, it's very tricky to make sure that the audience always knows which car is in front of which car, who's shooting at who, who's crashing into who. You need to know the geography of the car chase because the cameras are constantly in different locations at different angles. So camera placement and editing plays a major factor in how a car chase comes out, and Ronin has got some of the best in movie history, and that is still the case. Yes, there have been some great ones that have been made since, but Ronin is still up there over 20 years later. It's hanging in there as one of the best. But if you've never seen it and you want a quick crash course in how to shoot a car chase, Ronin is going to be your top pick off of this list. Now, since the Academy Awards began, only 6 horror movies have ever been nominated for Best Picture. They include The Exorcist, Jaws, The Sixth Sense, Black Swan, and Get Out. And the 6th one is my next pick, and it is the only one to ever win Best Picture. That is Silence of the Lambs. To this day, this holds up as one of the greatest serial killer movies ever made, and I have a theory. I think it's because there are so many giant key elements that could have been their own standalone movie that are working in unison in a very tight manner that doesn't have any fat on it, that you can easily watch and rewatch without any portion of this movie really feeling like it drags. Those portions I'm talking about are the Hannibal Lecter performance with Anthony Hopkins, easily one of his best, easily one of the best villains in movie history. His performance alone and his story alone could have been its own movie. It could have all been told from his perspective and it could have been great. You also get an FBI procedural thing with Jodie Foster. Obviously, she carries that incredibly well. That story could have been great on its own from that perspective. But in addition to all of that, you also get the perspective of Buffalo Bill. You're in his lair, and as chilling as that would have been, that could have stood alone. Yet somehow all those elements work together in a way that's fairly rare. Again, it's tight, it's clean. As many times as I watch this movie, which is fairly often, I probably see The Silence of the Lambs every other year or so, it keeps me engaged throughout, and I always forget how epic the climax of this movie is. And I'm wowed every time that this really bonkers, over-the-top, violent conclusion works on what feels like a fairly realistic, grounded movie. I absolutely love it. If it's been a while since you've seen it, you're gonna be hard-pressed to find something better to watch for free right now, with the exception of my number 1 pick on this list. Typically when talking about movies, the phrase crowd pleaser is a pejorative. It's not a very nice thing to say about a movie because it means the corners have been rounded off, there's nothing particularly interesting, it's just a movie that makes everybody happy. However, one of the most interesting and bizarrely successful crowd pleasers of all time has gotta be The Truman Show. Let me explain what I mean. For something that's so widely loved and appreciated, it's an incredibly bizarre and unusual movie. But I think a big part of The Truman Show's success with audiences is that because of our human nature, it's just in our brains somehow that we're being watched. It happens to almost everybody. They get that feeling, and The Truman Show brought it to life, I think, better than any other movie has tried to. I mean, the way that this movie begins, you feel like you're watching The Truman Show, and then it seamlessly slips into his world and his reality. His discovery of everything is oddly relatable for how bizarre it is, And then once he knows what's going on, you get this incredible adventure story and one of the best conclusions to a movie, I think, in movie history. It's uplifting, it means a lot, it sits pretty heavy with you. I absolutely love the final shots of this movie. The final scene that Jim Carrey has with Ed Harris, I think, is one of the greatest scenes in movie history. If it's been a while since you've seen it, you probably forgot how much you actually love The Truman Show. You probably watch a lot of movies like I do, and you would probably agree there's very few things that pair well with a movie like a good movie snack, which is why I love recommending today's sponsor, Universal Yums. When you're done with this video, go check out the link in the description below. Check out the Universal Yums website. There you will see some examples of some boxes you can get, and there you can sign up for one of 3 different subscription boxes at 3 different price points. And every single month, they will deliver a Universal Yums box to your door packed with snacks. Here's one of mine. You can see how much stuff is actually in this box. This is the biggest box they have, and it's more than me and my wife can possibly eat in a month. But every single month, the box is packed with snacks from a different surprise country. You never know where it's gonna come from. And what I like to do is get the box, open it up, see where it's from. Then I go find a movie that was filmed in that country or takes place in it, and me and my wife make a night of it. It's just a fun, different kind of date night to have at home that feels somewhat worldly. And it really elevates watching a movie. It's more than just putting a movie on and falling asleep. It's an event, because not only are you snacking, there's little bits of information and fun games and facts and things that you can enjoy along with the snacks in the box. So again, it's a whole experience. Go to the link in the description, sign up for yours. You can cancel it anytime, but I don't think you're gonna want to. I've been using it for well over a year, and we have no plans to cancel ours anytime soon. So again, go to the link in the description, check it out. That link is also in the top pinned comment, along with all the movies and the links to all the movies in this video. Speaking of the movies in this video, let's go ahead and move on with my 5 hidden gems on this list. So everybody knows The Karate Kid. It spawned multiple sequels, multiple remakes. The Cobra Kai series people are currently going nuts for. I mean, the thing is still going. But in the early 90s, somebody tried making somewhat of a Karate Kid ripoff that's different enough and actually holds up on its own, even if it's not as good as The Karate Kid. I'm talking about the movie Sidekicks. Now, this is very much a Karate Kid ripoff. It's got a similar structure to it. You've got the Mr. Miyagi type master teaching a teenage kid, but you've also got Chuck Norris playing himself in the movie. He sort of mentors this kid for some weird reason. And then you've also got Joe Piscopo, who's sort of leading the competing dojo, the evil dojo, which is another kind of hilarious thing to happen in this movie. And while it's not a great movie and not nearly as good as The Karate Kid, I think fans of The Karate Kid will get a kick out of it, for lack of a better phrase. Now, I don't talk about romantic comedies much on this channel, and it's not because I despise them, even though I might. It's because they're all the same. They tell the same story in almost the same fashion, or at least most of the big budget Hollywood releases. But like with all genres, there's a handful of really clever ones that stand out to me, and my next pick is one of those movies. In Penelope, Christina Ricci plays a girl who's from a wealthy family, and her family is trying to set her up with a suitor, and it's not going well because Penelope has a pig nose. And I don't just mean her nose is kind of turned up a little bit in kind of a cute way. I mean, it looks like they cut the nose off of a large pig and surgically attached it to her face. So the comedy aspect of this movie is coming from a very different place, and there's a lot of different themes going on in Penelope than you normally get in romantic comedies. James McAvoy plays the main love interest. This is from when he was much younger, but he really carries this movie. Now, obviously, it's Christina Ricci's movie. She does a great job, but his charm and everything that he has is sort of this, we'll call, I guess, like a Prince Charming type character. He really makes it fun to watch. You also get some cameos from people like Reese Witherspoon. And again, just a good overall message. There's a lot about self-worth wrapped up into this movie. For a genre I generally don't like, this one stands out to me as one of the best. If you're in the mood for this type of thing, I can't recommend Penelope enough. But even if you're not, and you just maybe need a good date night movie, you need to compromise on a romantic comedy, this is a great one to go with because it is so interesting and different. Now we're gonna have a huge change in tone with my next pick because we're going with one of the best, worst movies of all time. I'm talking about Troll 2, which is not a sequel to the movie Troll. It's called Troll 2 because they wanted people to go see it thinking it might be a sequel to Troll, which was a moderately, I'd just say mildly successful horror movie. And that's just where the weirdness begins with Troll 2. The directors didn't speak English, and they insisted that the actors stick to the script with no improvisation, no matter how little sense the script made, and they didn't even really hire actors. George Hardy, who is now a personal friend of mine from having done the show and having talked to him over the years.
And you can't piss on hospitality. I won't allow it!
What are you going to do to me, Daddy?
Tighten my belt by one loop so I don't feel hunger pains.
I mean, he was a dentist with no acting experience when they did this movie, and you can really tell, and he is a really good sport about it. He's actually in movies today and is doing a great job, but it's cool to see him in this. There is campy moment after campy moment in this movie. For first-time viewers, just when you feel like this movie cannot get weirder, cannot blow your mind more, it manages to one-up itself constantly. If you get into this one with the right tone early on, it is a laugh a minute and a real fun movie to watch, which is why it has developed such a strong cult following over the years. If you were the least bit interested in getting into cheesy horror movies, Troll 2 is a fantastic primer. I highly recommend checking it out. Now, John Milius is a name that is probably not familiar to most of you watching, and by most, I don't mean 51%. I mean like over 90% of you have probably never even heard the name, but there's a very good chance you've not only seen a bunch of his movies, there's a very good chance you love a bunch of his movies. Now, while he did direct a couple of these, he is most famous for having written gems like Conan the Barbarian, Apocalypse Now, Red Dawn, Dirty Harry, and a lot more. And this movie gives you a lot of behind-the-scenes details and some really great stories. So this is a must-watch for movie buffs. You hear me say that a lot on this channel. This is a great example of one. There's so many fantastic behind-the-scenes stories of things that happened on the set of Apocalypse Now and Conan the Barbarian. If you love those movies, you have to see this. You have to see what happened. But also, it's very interesting to hear about John Milius and sort of how he rose to power as this great writer, and also how he was sort of pushed out of Hollywood. It's interesting stuff for a bunch of reasons, but again, this is just one of those gems that movie lovers need to watch. It's free on YouTube right now. It's been a while since I've seen it available anywhere else. And then my top hidden gem pick on this list is one of, if not the best, low-budget sci-fi movie I've ever seen in my life, and one of the best hidden gems I've ever seen on a streaming service. And there's another and before I tell you the name of this movie, I don't think I've ever talked about it on the channel before because it has been years since I've seen Primer available on a streaming service. But it's free on YouTube right now. Don't forget the links to these are in the top pinned comment below. And Primer has Christopher Nolan level mind f***ery in it, even though it looks like it was shot on an iPhone. And that's not necessarily a knock against the movie. This is a very, very low budget movie. You can tell it was filmed in very sparse locations, but the way it was written and the way that time travel functions and what the main characters do with it is different than anything I've ever seen in a time travel movie, making this one of the best time travel movies ever made. And that is not an exaggeration. This one probably fits into the top 10 along with movies like Back to the Future. It's that smart. I absolutely love it. If you like mind-bending sci-fi movies, watch this one. Give it a few minutes. If you're not used to watching things done on a really low budget, it will take you a few minutes, kind of like watching a black and white movie. After about 10-15 minutes, you forget. Primer is going to tie your brain in a pretzel. Do not watch this one while you're playing around on your phone. Watch it with intent. Pay close attention. It might just blow your mind. Speaking of blowing your mind, if you've seen anything mind-blowing lately, let me know in the comments down below. Who knows, I might take your recommendation and then recommend it myself here in future videos. While you're leaving a comment, let's also thank the Patreon supporters. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter and maybe seeing your name posted here, there's a link in the video description. There's also a link down there to Universal Yums and a link where you can become a channel member and get access to exclusive movie reviews and recommendations right here on YouTube. But I will keep making these videos as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special YouTube episode, and you will see me on the next one.